7 p.m. New York time. My name is Mark Beecher, and I'll be your host tonight. My very special guest tonight is Mr. Jose Hernandez. Jose survived a near-death experience in the year 2000, which transformed his life and initiated a new future artistic life and teaching through his ventures in inner immersion and immersion arts. Jose speaks widely about how these artistic endeavors affect our society. Jose's experience is also featured in a Netflix docuseries, Surviving Death. So welcome, Jose, and open your microphone and introduce yourself to us.
Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Jose Hernandez, and I'm glad to be here with you tonight.
Oh, we're glad to have you, and we know you have a very interesting story for us.
Yeah, it is an interesting story. Totally unexpected, right? Because
Right. We're hearing a lot more these days about people with near-death experience. Um, I don't know why the subject is so frequent. If people didn't hear about this years before, or it's something new that people are surviving this more and more. Um, but it tells us a little bit about that space leading to death that we're not familiar with. So
it does.
uh,
Yeah, the miracles in medicine are what
right.
changed it. The ability to resuscitate people changed it in the 60s. So it's relatively new. I mean, some people would come back on their own before, but now we have the ability to revive you, which is what they did with me. So I'm going to go ahead and start my story if that's okay. And like,
Absolutely. We
yeah,
look forward to it.
yeah, thank you. So my story started in 1999, and I was running some electrical lines in Miami on Biscayne Boulevard, and it was Wednesday night. And people always ask me, "How do you know it was Wednesday?" It's easy because the next day was Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So we were all looking forward to that 4-day weekend. You got Thanksgiving, you got that Black Friday, then you got the weekend, so we got 4 days off, and we're all kind of looking forward to that. But we were a little behind schedule, so we wanted to kind of make up the time. So what we decided to do, because we're brilliant people, was I'll stay up in the bucket, and the driver will navigate from one point to the next without going up and down and going through all that hassle. Uh, so because of that, the driver was more focused on me in the bucket, so he was looking up more than he was looking down. And there was a stump in front of him that he missed, and he hit it. When he hit that stump, I hit the bucket and I broke all the ribs on my right side.
Mm.
And of course, when I share the story, everybody's going to think that I got electrocuted. No, it wasn't that dramatic. So I
Right.
broke all my ribs, and of course, I wind up in an ER. And they tape you up when you break your ribs, and it's a little difficult to breathe. And they gave me these pain meds. But the pain meds had what you call an anti-inflammatory in it. It was just ibuprofen.
Okay.
Everybody takes that all the time, right?
Right.
But it turns out I'm allergic.
Ah,
So I take the pill, and by the time I get home, it's about an hour later, and I feel this really difficulty in breathing. So I call up the hospital and I say, hey, what's going on? I'm having a tough time breathing. And they tell me, well, Jose, you're all taped up. You broke some ribs. You can't take a deep breath. Anyway, so it just feels that way. Me being kind of like very science-based and math-based, this guy's a doctor. He knows what he's talking about. So I said, okay. So I continued to take this medication. Now, it wasn't like an epileptic attack where I shut down completely in 1 minute. It was a slow process for me. So I got past Thanksgiving, got to the holidays, got to Christmas, and I could barely get up from the bed. In fact, I started to sleep on the sofa because I had to sleep sitting. I couldn't lay down anymore. Never occurred to me that it could be the medication. Never occurred to anyone.
right.
So And that year, of course, was that crazy year when 2000 was coming and everybody thought the world could end, right? So it was all this drama, like New Year's Eve on 2000. And I'm just sitting there waiting for 2000 to come by. I'm really kind of like out of it, getting so difficult to breathe, I could barely walk. So get past New Year's Eve, comes January 5th of 2000. And I finally looked at my wife and I said, look, I think you guys are going to have to take me to the hospital, my wife and my son. And they said, okay. So they drive me to the hospital. It's about a 40-minute drive. And I finally get there. You get into the ER. They decide they're going to admit me. So I looked at my wife and my son. I said, you guys go home. I'm going to be fine. They said, nothing, right? Just a little, whatever. And you know how we always think we're bulletproof. We're going to live
Yep.
forever. So
Yep.
I'm thinking, I'm going to be okay. I've been down this road before. Go home. So they left. It was about a little after 12 midnight. And the nurse came in the room right after they left and she said, Jose, if you need anything, there's a little red button right by the bed. If you feel like you need something, just push that button. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm never going to push that button. I'm a guy, right? We're New Yorkers, we're tough. We're like, I would never push that button. But at the same time, I'm thinking, man, I should really push that button because
Yeah.
I really don't feel well, right? So I decided I'm going to wait. So I waited and I waited. And I watch the clock. If you imagine you're laying down, you're facing a door, and there's a clock right over it, and I could watch that thing tick, tick,
Yeah.
tick, and I waited about 45 minutes. Then I was at that point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I said, "Oh gosh, I got to push this button." So I did. Push the button. Takes about a minute for the nurse to get there. How do I know? I'm looking right at the clock.
Right.
That moment was one of the longest moments in my life. It just felt like forever. When she opened the door, she just looked at me and she hit the code blue right on the wall. When she hit the code blue, I'm thinking, no, she just didn't do that because I have an understanding that that means that I must be seriously ill, right? Something's
Right.
really bad. So I'm going to share to you what it feels like to die first before I get into the experience. So the next thing I know, people are running into this room. There's a crash team coming in to try to save your life, right?
Right.
First experience I feel is shame. And why do I feel shame? Because I can't hold on to the sheet. I'm trying to hold on to that sheet, keep myself covered. They come in, they pull the sheet off, they strip you down, they lift me up, they put me on a wooden board and they lay me back down. Then they start doing their thing, right? I wasn't really thinking about what they were doing at all. I was more focused on what I was feeling. So that feeling of shame, like I felt so weak and helpless. Like I'm supposed to be a man, I'm supposed to be tough. That's the way I grew up, right? Now all of a sudden, I'm so weak I can't even hold on to a sheet. So I get past that. The next thing that I'm struggling with is I start thinking, what if something's really going to happen to me here? For the first time, I start thinking, wow, something happens. My wife and my son are gone. I'm alone here. Now, the room is full of people, but in my mind, I felt so alone. And so I started thinking, maybe I need to let them know that they need to contact my family so they could get back here in time. But I can't speak because I can't breathe. I'm
Right.
suffocating. So I can't say a word and I can't inhale or exhale. So I'm just stuck there. Then with that, after that, I feel like maybe something could happen. I get this huge knot in my chest, like my heart. And I feel this sense of loss and like I'm falling and like I'm going to lose everything I know and everything I love. And I felt so sad. It just devastated me. I've never felt so low in my life. Like everything that you know is going to go away. You're going to lose everything you know and love. And they're not going to make it back in time to see me. And I can't even ask for them here. I can't even say, hey, reach out to them. So the next thing that followed was a tremendous sense of fear. And I grew up in the South Bronx, so fear was something that I've known and I've experienced, but never like this. This was a fear that there was no way out. And I'm thinking like an engineer. I'm thinking I'm going to get shut off like a light and I'm going to just turn into blackness. I'm going to turn to nothing. And that thought of turning to nothing made me so fearful. Then I started thinking maybe I should hold somebody's hand, right? And there's a bunch of nurses and doctors there trying to save your life, and I could reach out and grab somebody's hand. I can't ask for it, right? I can't
Right.
say, hey, hold my hand, but I could reach out and grab it. Then what happens? I start thinking about my dad. My dad died 5 years before. And me and my dad were always pumping heads. We were always fighting. He used to drink a lot. He was an alcoholic and he was quite abusive. So we had a very difficult relationship. And when I became a teenager, I kind of decided I needed to help my mom. So I became like her protector. And we were always fighting because of that. And he grew up, my father was Latino, but part First Nation. And he had this mindset of First Nation people, like the men are supposed to be life takers, right? They hunt, they do all that, they provide for their family. And he had that thought in his head, but he had it like a little distorted. And he wanted us to be like emotionless, not feel, not anything. So if I felt, I couldn't cry. If I got hurt, we couldn't cry. If I felt pain or hurt by somebody, I couldn't say, hey, the person hurt me. I need somebody help me. In fact, he was the type of guy that he felt that men should not hug. That wasn't what men do. And he and I never told each other that we love each other. I never said, Dad, I love you. He never said it to me. So that sets a kind of like a background for that. And because he wanted us to be tough and never show fear, because we grew up in the South Bronx, I'm thinking about him and I'm thinking, you know what? If I show fear, he's going to turn in his grave. And I can't do that. That would bring shame and stuff to the family, right? So I'm thinking like that. And all of a sudden, I felt my body just stiffen. And I said, I'm not going to show fear to these people. And I didn't. I didn't. I sucked it up. Next thing, I started thinking about God or creator, because to my father was creator, to my mother was God. And I started thinking, what if God is real? What if, there is something out there that's like that? And I said to myself, well, let me pray. If he's real, let me see. So I started praying to God. I said, God, if you're real, creator, if you're real, if you help me out of this, I promise I'm going to be a better guy. I'm going to change. I'm going to be a good person. And I'm just going to change my ways. And then I decide I wait. I waited, I'm going to say about 20 seconds only, but the 20 seconds felt like forever. And my heart during that time is going crazy because they gave me all these meds to try to get me to breathe, and my heart is just pounding because I'm not getting any oxygen in there. And it feels like a horse galloping in my chest. And all of a sudden, you hear the monitor going beep, 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 beep. Then all of a
Right.
sudden, I heard that thing just go like this, beep. Now in my head, I knew that meant that my heart just stopped, and you feel it. Your heart stops, you feel that.
Okay.
And I knew I was dead. And I got angry. And I said, I knew you weren't real. What the hell am I doing? So I literally just cursed God out and said, I knew you weren't real anyway. What am I doing? And then I fell back into myself and I started thinking because I knew I was dying. The first thought was, there's no shame and I'm not being weak, but there's nothing I could do to stop this from happening. So, you know, I have to accept this. And after I said that, I said to myself, then it's okay to die. It's okay to die. You are a hard life. And I said it just like this, Jose, you lived a hard life. It's okay to die. And the minute I said that, it was a shadow in the door. And I remember I was facing that doorway and I could see a shadow, like there was a lot of bright light behind me and that shadow was coming in. And the minute I said it was okay to die, that shadow moves into the room and it weaves around everybody there and it reaches out to me and it touches me. And the minute this thing touches me, I feel this tremendous sense of relief and I feel this warm breeze blowing. This warm breeze is blowing and I feel this tremendous sense of relief. In fact, I feel better than I ever felt ever. I could breathe. I was perfectly fine. And I feel this breeze. And I got this crazy long hair, right? So I'm thinking, My hair is blowing in the wind, and it's just a warm breeze, and all I feel is peace, calm, and love. And that warm breeze is just blowing, blowing, and I feel like I'm lifting and I'm lifting and I'm lifting. The next thing I know, I'm standing in the corner of the room and I'm looking at this crash chain trying to save me. But I looked at myself, and at that moment, I was dead. And I looked at myself and I said this magical word. I said, that's me and I'm dead. But if that's me, then who am I? Because I knew that everything that I needed to do, what I was doing was laying in that bed dead, that gurney. My eyes, my mind, everything that I needed to do, what I was doing was in that bed dead. So how could I be doing this? So the question was, that's me and I'm dead, then who am I? And then I hear a voice on my left, and it was a woman's voice, and she said to me, think of your body as if it was a car. And that car, that's like 5 million miles on it. You got to say goodbye to this. We can't fix it anymore. We got to say goodbye. So I'm thinking, and wow, I just said goodbye to life. Now they're asking me to say goodbye to my body. So I looked at myself and I approached my body. As I got near it, something really magical happened. For the first time in my life, I looked at myself and I was good enough. And I felt compassion and love for who I had been. And I realized I never ever accepted who I had been. I was never good enough. There was always something wrong. And everybody always told me, you're not good enough. You're never going to make it. It's, and somehow all that stuck and I believed it. But now I looked at myself and I knew that wasn't true. I was perfect the way I had been. This body had been perfect for me. In fact, I realized this body gave itself up for me. And as I looked at this body, I started to get these memories. And I call them benign memories because they're not like memories like when you get married, when you graduate university, when you see your first baby born. They were more like mundane stuff, like holding my little brother's hand, taking a deep breath, hearing a bird sing, you know, hugging someone, a kiss, little things that we do every day that are happening every minute. And then I had this tremendous sense of loss as I looked at myself and I said that because I was always trying to make money. I was always working, busting my buns to work, make money. And that's all I thought about. Now here I was dead and it was too late. And I realized that life was happening every second that I was there and I was missing it. So one of the memories I had was looking at one of my children in the eyes when they were real little and I could see the love they had for me. And I'm saying, how could I have missed all these things? And now it's too late. I'm dead. And I had this sense of sadness and regret. So the next thing I know, I hear this voice say to me, Jose, we got to keep going. So I said, okay. And I followed it. And I'm going to call her an angel because I believe that's what she was. So I'm following her. And then I see this hole in front of me, like a black hole right in front of me. And I kind of were walking and I just fall in this hole. And I feel like something's being torn off of me. Then I land on the bottom and she looks at me. She says, we got to keep going. And I nod and keep going. There's another hole in front of me and I fall in. The same thing happened. I feel like the only discomfort I felt during the experience was right there when I was falling off of it and I felt something being like ripped off of me. This time when I land on the bottom, if you can imagine, a ball, I'm right in the center, floating. And this ball is just a bunch of color. And these colors are moving and they're alive and they're speaking. And I hear like a million voices talking to me at the same time. And I hear this chatter like, shh. Well, one thing I felt for sure was that I felt unjudged and accepted. And I felt that great sense of love and stuff. Then I hear that voice telling me that discomfort you felt was all those bad moments in your life. They can't come with you. You got to leave them here. They're not of this place. They're from here. And in that place, I understood that very clearly. So now I feel the color is moving towards me or I'm moving towards the color. I don't know which, but all of a sudden I'm inside this color. And I feel the color talking to me. And I could feel when I'm in red what red felt like, and when I'm in blue what blue felt like. So I went through the experience of feeling every color like that. And as I'm in there, I'm learning, it's telling me how to paint. Now, I never painted in my life, but when I came back, I could paint. So I'm hearing it describe to me what I need to do. So it says, take a canvas and paint it black first. And while I'm there, I'm thinking, why black? And she said, go outside at night and look in the sky. And in that blackness that you see where you don't see any light or anything, is all the ingredients that are needed to make everything else that you know. And I understood that perfectly clear. So now I'm moving through the color. I finally come out the other side. And I'm going to say I'm in heaven here. And I see this beautiful forest in front of me. Now, I'm a New York City kid, and I lived in Miami. So I see this beautiful forest and a beautiful mountain range right behind the forest is in front of me, and behind it are these beautiful mountains. And even there, I'm thinking, wow, why would I be here? I grew up where I never saw any of this. But anyway, it was so beautiful and breathtaking. I could see animals roaming and running around, and there was this big tree in front of me. And before I moved to go near that tree, I asked myself, I started thinking about my kids, and I said, what's going to happen to my kids? And I heard that voice tell me not to worry, you could see them from here. The minute she said that, I was like, oh, wow. If I could see them from here, I have nothing to worry about. They're still with me. Then I realized I was flying. I said, I'm flying. And she said, Jose, that's normal here. So I embraced that and I started to move. I started approaching this tree. And as I approach this tree, as I get near it, I become the tree. I could feel the tree drawing from Mother Earth, sucking water and nutrients up. I could feel its heart and I could feel its branches. I could feel the warm sun hitting it and everything. And as I roamed up the tree, I became the leaf. Then I became the bird that was on the tree. Then I became the sky, and I was becoming everything that I got near. Became the stones, and it taught me what being one with everything was. Then I finally looked at that mountain and I said, "Man, I want to go over there and have this beautiful white snow cap on top." And I'm thinking, I just want to go up there and see what that looks like. So I move and I head up there and I go up to the sky. And I'm flying really close to the top of the mountain, and I could see the whiteness. And as I look down, I could see the beautiful snow all over the top of the mountain. Then I look up again. If I look to my right, I could see the sun. The sun was, I don't know if it was rising or setting. All I know is that it was like I was looking through a telescope and I could see the flares coming off of it. And all that warm air was coming from there. And I'm thinking, you know, this must be what's lifting me, what's letting me fly, all this warm air, right? So I'm thinking like that. Then I look to the left and I see a beautiful beach, and it's like a U-shaped beach. And I look down and I see the ocean and I can see the water. When I see the water, I see like a man and he's got like six children in one hand in a line and one kid on another hand, and they're all standing like knee deep in the water. And I'm thinking, all right, I either go to the sun or I go down there and I see who this man is. Now, I believe at this moment that if I would have went to the sun, I would have stayed there. So I went down to see who this man was. So I approached this man. And as I get near him, and maybe I'm about 10 or 15 feet away from him, he turns around. When he turns around, that man is my dad. And it, it was like my chance to make up for all that I couldn't do in life. I'm looking at my father and I'm saying, oh my God, I got an opportunity to do here what I can't do in life. I'm going to hug him and I'm going to tell him I love him. And, you know, I'm going to frame that and go. When my father was dying, my father had terminal cancer. He was dying. We had a family meeting, and I'm the second youngest. But when we had the meeting, The doctor recommended that we take him off of life support because he could never survive. And he was just, we were prolonging his agony and pain. So all my brothers and sisters were like, I can't do that. I can't do that. So it kind of left it really to me. And I couldn't let my mother do it. So I decided I wanted to do it. Or actually, I had to. So when I disconnected my father from life support, I watched him pass. And as he passed, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say, Dad, I love you. Dad, I care about you, whatever. I just looked at him and watched him. I don't know why I didn't have the strength and the courage to tell him that. So I always regretted it, that I never had that opportunity to do that with my father, to kind of make peace between us. And now here I am on the other side, and I'm saying this is my opportunity to do what I couldn't do in life. So I looked at my dad, and I could hear him in my head. We weren't talking like this. I could just hear him. And I know he could hear me. So I said, Dad, I love you. And he said, I love you too. And we had this exchange. And in this exchange, I forgave him and he forgave me. It was really beautiful. So then I reached out to hug my father. And I hugged my dad. When I hug him, I become him. And I experience his life in seconds. I lived his whole life. And I knew exactly why he was the way he was. So I understand what being in someone's shoes is like. We say that all the time. But we can never be in anybody's shoes, ever. We just don't know what they're going through, what their experience of life is. So I had that beautiful experience. Then when we broke off, he looked at me, he said, Jose, you got to go back. And I looked at him and I said, I don't want to go back. In fact, I said, no way, Jose. And he looked at me, he said, no, you got to go back. It's not your time. And I said, no, I don't want to go back. I like it here. Anyway, we had that exchange, and all of a sudden I feel something pulling me from my chest and pulling me from the back. And all of a sudden I wind up back in my body, and I open my eyes for a second, and I see the doctor just doing impressions. And when I opened my eyes, she kind of moved back. I think I surprised her. And
Yeah.
then I went back to my father. So I'm back with my dad. And we're having the conversation again. Hey, you got to go back. I don't want to go back. You got to go back. I don't want to. And, you know, he finally said to me, you know what, Jose, let's make a deal. Now, my father's always making deals. He was always making deals. So I said, all right, what's the deal? And he said, I promise that when your time comes, I'm going to come get you. And I thought that was the greatest deal in the world. And I said, okay, I like that deal. I'm going to accept that deal. And all I did was say, I'm accepting that deal. And I felt that tug and that pulling from the back, and I wound up in my body. And all of a sudden, I'm in my body. And I feel they had stabilized me. I had an intubator on. I was intubated. And the first thing I felt two things when I got back. The first thought was I such a bad person that I just got kicked out of heaven? The second was I was back inside this body, and I felt like separate from everything again. Wasn't I was distinct. So I everything I touched over there I became. Here I was always me, no matter what I touched. So I felt trapped, and I didn't like that feeling. Anyway, I wind up 3 months in hospital, and I'm intubated for about 6 weeks. And about the seventh week, I'm beginning to speak. My cardiologist is in the room, and I said to him, you know what? I think I went somewhere. All I said was, I think I went somewhere. And this guy just went like, what? No, no, no. Your brain is still alive. I'll never forget it. Your brain is still alive for 2 minutes after your heart stops. You had DMT is released, and you have all these meds we're giving you to keep you alive. So basically what he was telling me, what I just experienced was not real.
Right. Right.
And that made me feel like, oh, wow, this was all a hallucination. So I start thinking, is a hallucination. Now, my prognosis when I'm in the hospital is you're never going to get out of here alive. And so I had zero chance of living. Then, after the 3 months, and I'll tell you what happened when I'm in the hospital. Every time they hit a cold blue, I'm thinking that's going to happen to me again because they keep telling me I'm never going to leave here alive. And I would escape to that ball of colors. And that's where I found my refuge, my peace, my calm. Because it was terrifying. Every time they hit a cold blue, I'm thinking that's going to be me again soon. Anyway, I finally got out of hospital. And then they gave me 18 months to live. And they wanted to do a surgery where they were going to cut half of each lung off. And I'm thinking, why do I want to go through all this? And I only had a 50% chance of surviving the surgery. So I'm thinking, what the heck? I've been here for 3 months already. I got to get out of here. I'll go home and I'll just live the rest of my life out, right? So I go home and I'm slowly getting better, slowly getting better, slowly getting better. And I always keep thinking about those colors in that bowl that I was in. So every time I felt really bad, I'm thinking about the colors in that bowl I was in. So I finally go get mental help. Now, when I left the hospital, I was completely addicted to a bunch of meds. Now, they didn't tell me that when I left the hospital, I was going to have an addiction issue. So I struggled for 3 years with that. So I went to get mental help because I thought that, first of all, the experience was not real. So I thought my mind was broken and I was crazy. So I went to get mental help and I went through a series of mental health professionals. And it took me 3.5 or 4 years before I could sit down and share that story that I just told you with someone. And this mental health professional just looked at me one day and she said, Jose, I'm not supposed to do this. And she sat right next to me. She took my hand. And when she took my hand, I was back in that hospital. And I was in that bed dying and I was afraid. And I wanted somebody to hold my hand so bad. And I thought I was being tough and I was being brave. But I realized at that moment that I was such a coward, that it was okay to be afraid. It was okay, but I didn't know how to show that fear. And I was able to share my story and she changed my life. The minute I accepted that I did go there, that I did meet my father, that I had that experience, it just changed my life in a good way. Now I'm able to understand that when my time comes, my father is going to come and get me. And I'm not afraid of dying because of that. One of the things I learned when I was there and I looked at my body, this is very important, was, and I'll just say it to everyone like this, we always look at ourselves in such a harsh way. We're always judging who we are. We never look for what's good in us. So when we look in the mirror, we're looking for what's wrong. We never look for what's right in us. And that experience taught me to look for what's right in me instead of always looking for what's wrong. We're not perfect. There's always something that we could look at and say, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. But we can also look at ourselves and say, this is good, this is right, this is right. But we never do. So that's one of the things I learned from that experience. So that's kind of like my experience of dying and what I went through. Coming back and going through what they call integration, the process of re coming back into life was a challenge because I grew up kind of like my dad. I taught my kids to be very science-based, very mathematical and very science-based. So all of a sudden, when I'm talking about God or spirit or creator, they're looking at me like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He never did that before. And they would tell me, everybody used to call me Joe in the city. Where's the old Joe? And I'm thinking, well, you got a better version now. You got a guy that's a little spiritual that maybe I can help guide you in better ways. But ultimately, my marriage broke up. It's hard for people to embrace the person that they didn't marry. You change so much. Well, I did anyway. And so that how my journey started. That's how I started painting. So this painting behind me is one of my pieces. Uh, And it shifted my life and my career. And now we developed a program where we work with a lot of rehab centers and stuff like that to help people cope with their addiction issues. So I could speak to it from my own experience, and I find that we're able to help a lot of people and get them thinking in a good way and moving in a good direction. So that's kind of like what I'm doing right now with people.
Okay. Are you training people in painting, or you just training people in finding themselves and letting them explore um, what the life may bring to them? Showing them a different side of life.
Yeah, I'm training them how to find out who they really are. So I'm training them to understand that that moment that I had when I saw my body dead, and I asked myself that question, who am I? If that's me and I'm dead, then who am I? I know I'm a lot more than this body.
Right.
And I'm trying to help them find that because that's the inner strength, that's the resilience, that's where they're going to find the energy and the strength they need to overcome all these things that we face in this life. So what I do is we train facilitators to do the program that we do. We go to rehab centers, we work with people who are struggling with addiction or homelessness or there's so many issues that we're struggling with. And we help them to reframe how they think about themselves and how they value themselves and how they do matter and how they are important. And I'm going to frame it like this. When I was a teenager, I went to work at KFC, the Bronx. So I'm walking like from Rosedale Avenue to Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's a 40-minute walk every day after school. Go work 4 or 5 hours, right? To make $1.50 an hour. And when I started going there, my other friends, were all in high school and they're all making fun of me. Oh, you're working at KFC. What the hell? You want to be an engineer and look what you're doing. So they used to make fun of me and stuff. And I kind of felt a little shame for that. Then I realized at one moment that, every time I went there, after I had this experience, I went there and I cooked this chicken and people would come there and buy it and they would eat it or they would bring it home to their family. And I realized that I was helping them feed their family, that I was serving something that was greater than just me trying to make $1.50, that these people would come there to feed their family or eat themselves. And I reframed it and I made myself feel good about what I had done there. And, you know, I started thinking about all these people flipping hamburgers, were doing all this to survive and make a living. And I realized there's no shame in that. You're actually helping other people. Whoever comes there to eat, you fed them. They bring it home to their family, you fed their family. So I just look at it like that now. And that's how I view life moving forward. I don't look at it from that negative way where I was always looking at it. That lens that says you're never good enough. Look, you're frying chicken. And I reframe it to say, look, I'm feeding people.
Okay.
So that's what we do, and we try to help people to find that inner self, that being that's inside of them, that I found that day, that I know is with me, and I know when I leave this body is who I really am. This is Jose here, but there's a Jose back here somewhere that's going to be forever, and that Jose is the real me.
Um, so you're training facilitators, and that's for this inner immersion group, or both that and the immersion arts.
Right. So the facilitators are trained. We train people to go to the rehab centers. It's a 3-month program. It's pretty complicated. You have to have a background in mental health. The reason you need to have a background in mental health is because people are really struggling with a lot of issues, and you got to be able to understand what they're going through. We're not doing mental health work, though. We're there as a mindfulness practice. And the idea is to help people to move through their life, re-experience what they've been through, understand what really hurt me. So why am I doing drugs? Why am I an alcoholic? Why am I beating things? Why do I have anger issues? It's always something that happened to us when we were very young. And we identify that. And once we identify that, and I say, well, this happened to Jose, for example. Now I feel like I could live my life more free, more open. I have more courage to face the days. and I understand what the problem is. Once you understand what the problem is, you can fix it. So if you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it. So I'm going to give you an example. If you crack a bone or fracture a foot and you're walking on it, all you feel is pain and you know something's wrong and it's swollen and everything, but you really don't know what it is. You have to go to a hospital and get an x-ray or go somewhere and get an x-ray. And they're going to look at that x-ray and say, oh, this bone is fractured right here. They put a cast on it. They know exactly what to do. So we're those people that say, here's where the break is. Now mental health professional, rehab centers, this is what their core issue is. Now you help them with that. Now that you understand what it is. And once I understand what my problem is, I think what happens is we tap into our inner healer because now I know what's wrong with me. Now I'm not guessing. I'm like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm not good enough. And it always boils down to a lot of things that don't really define what the core issue is, what the actual problem, what the cause is. And the program just identifies what the cause is. We don't diagnose, we don't do anything like that. We leave that to other people. And we've changed so many lives in a good way right now that I am just so proud of that program. It's unbelievable.
Is there a spiritual component in that training, or just offer that subject to people to say that you are more than the body that you're sitting in? You're more than that. Um, is there a spiritual component in that training?
Yeah, the program is completely spiritual,
Okay.
right? So it's not psychotherapy. This is real life therapy, I call it. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts and find out who we really are. So I share my experience. We do breath work, we do art, we interpret the art, we do eye movement, we do uh, meditations. The program is a 6 hour program. So when you come in, I go to rehab center. I'm going to be 6 hours working with you. By the time we finish that and do all that breath work and everything we got to do there, you've shifted so much. So paint when you come in and you answer questions. When we finish, you paint again and you answer questions. You could see the shift in the answering the questions right away in the 6 hours that you're there. And it's a lot of fun because you get to interpret the art. So we all have our paintings and we're all looking at, let's say you're looking at my painting, you say, what do you see in there? And everybody gets to tell what they see in there. And it's quite engaging and it just gets people to open up and loosen up and everybody feels very, what we create is a lot of trust and what we create breakthroughs right there. So it's pretty dynamic.
Are you personally painting most days or most weeks, or what's your creative flow to painting?
Yeah, so I paint when I get every time I get time. So
Okay.
when I have time, I paint. Uh, we do a lot of work with the inner immersion. So there's a lot of that going on. We're actually looking at some potential government contracts and stuff like that. So there's a lot of work that's happening. But every minute I get, I try to paint. And when you paint, everything I paint is what I saw when I was dead.
Okay.
So it's that bowl, little sections of it. So I'll give you an example. I have a painting called Event Horizon. And that's where remember I said either the color was moving toward me or I was moving towards the color.
Right.
It's where it pulled me right in. So to me, because I like to think in scientific ways all the time, that's what came to me. It was like a black hole just pulling me right to it, even though it was all color, it wasn't black. And it just pulled me through it and I couldn't stop. I couldn't hold myself back. It just drew me right inside of it. And the experience that I had inside that color was of realizing that I didn't need to judge myself and that I needed to stop feeling like that I had no value. And while I was in that color, all I felt was non-judged and and full of pride and joy and happiness because I felt so good about who I had been. Now, remember, I used the word had been because while I was there, I realized that I was not alive, like in a body. I had an understanding that I was not in my body anymore. I knew I was dead. So I knew I was in spirit.
Okay. Now, I know in your bio you have paintings in several galleries. Are any of these available online for viewing?
Yeah, if you go to Jose Hernandez Fine Art, you can see some of the art.
Okay.
Uh, it's in galleries. I'm going to be doing a program with a gentleman out in Austin, Texas. That's going to be quite interesting, where you actually walk into a room and you experience the art all around you. So it'll be like a 360 experience, almost like me walking into the art when I was into the colors when I was dead.
Right.
So I think that's going to be ready at the end of next year or something like that. I don't know exactly when, but that's going to happen. And yeah, so if you go to Jose Hernandez Fine Art, you'll see the art. You can purchase them online. Uh, I do them on watercolor paper, but I also like to do them on metal and glass. And the reason I like to do them on metal and glass is because when you look at it, you can see yourself. And that's the experience I had when I was dying, right? When I saw my body. And so I was two separate places. So I love to capture that. So when I look at I have a metal piece that I'm looking at right now, right in front of me. When I look at it, I could see my own reflection. And it makes me feel like I'm in there at the same time. So I'm back inside that space of color. Uh, and in my mind, in my heart, now I can't prove this in any way. I can't prove my experience that what I shared with you either. It's anecdotal, right? I can only share what happened to me. But I feel like when I'm in those colors, it was healing me. And that's how I got out of that hospital. I felt like something of spirit was there, something of God or spirit or whatever you want to believe, the God of your belief. And it healed me. And that's why I make sure that I say the way it was. Every time they hit that cold blue, I would go to that space with the colors. And that's where I found peace and calm because there was a lot of fear. You know, when you go into the ER like that, the walls are glass a lot of times.
Okay.
Anyway, where I was, you could see the people next door to you. Sometimes someone would come into that room and 2 or 3 hours later, they lost that fight and they were gone. And you could see it. Even though when you're intubated, you're like in a half comatose state. They induce coma. You're aware of a lot of things still happening around you. You know, they think that we don't have this awareness. So, in fact, when I was dying, I forgot to share this part. There's a moment when I could hear the IV drip, and it sounded like rain hitting a tin roof in Puerto Rico, somewhere like in an island, right?
Right.
Flash, flash. And I remember looking at the wallpaper, and this is right before I died. And I could see the grain in the wallpaper, and I'm like awed, like, wow, what is going on? My senses are so like incredible. And you have that sense of everything happening around you. In that room, you're aware of everything, everything everybody says. Now they're looking at me and they thinking I'm dead, but I know everything they said. I could, when you said to the cardiologist, well, you said this when I was there, you know,
Yeah.
and they would be like, they have no answer for that. So there's a great awareness that happens to us when we have that experience. And I find that in that color, I find that space, I find shelter, I find peace, I find calm. And when I look at myself in that reflected image, and if it's metal or glass, I'm looking for the beauty in me. I'm not looking for what's wrong with me anymore. I look for what's right about me. And I think if we did that as human beings, this world would be such a different place.
Um, do the colors you use for painting, do the colors have specific yeah, emotional feelings to you?
Well, I'm just going to share it like this with you. To me, the color is almost living. It has a spirit. It has its energy, right? So that color is on that wall. But for me to see it, it has to travel across that space and get into my eye so I can interpret it and then my brain interprets it and I see it. So that color's moving. It's a frequency. It's not stagnant. It's not. So to me, the color's living. It's like the trees, like everything else, the birds, it has its own spirit. It's not an animated spirit like we as living, what we call living has, but it still has a spirit. And I feel color communicates with us, right? So we're all together at a museum or an art gallery or something. We're looking at three pieces of art. I like one. You're going to say, I don't like that one. I like this one. And the other person says, oh, I don't like none of those. I like this one. To me, that's that art talking to us, and it it kind of resonates with us. And I think when I pick something that I like that's art-based, I think it's talking to me. Now that simplifies it to me. It's a simple way of putting that connection that we have with something that is inanimate, right? In our view. But to me, it's a conversation that's going on, and I don't have the equipment to pick that up here like I did when I was dying.
How long did it take you from that initial period in 2000 to creating uh, the immersion arts and the inner immersion? How long did it take you to put that into effect?
Yeah, that was a process. I started painting about 3 years after as a form of reconnecting to what I had experienced. I wanted to capture what I saw. Now, remember, I never painted before, so I had to start from scratch. I'm thinking, no, I didn't get training. I didn't go anywhere. I learned over there.
Right.
And so I started painting about 3 years later. And the idea was if I could create these paintings and if people could look at it and feel the same way I felt, then they could find that refuge. And so I decided I'm going to do some meditations and I'm going to have some painting. And we look at the paintings. And then when we look at the painting, I do the meditations. Hopefully, you get a sense of where I have been. As I kept doing that, I started to learn that if I like the colors in a certain way, they begin to move and change. And when you do that, you got a sense of what I actually saw. It was a moving, it was alive. So it creates a sense of movement and it changes the dynamics. Now all of a sudden, it's not only a painting, it has some kind of movement. And we when we see movement, things that move are living. Things that move are not stagnant, right? So it had a sense of something associated with life. It took about 13 years to develop the immersion program. As I started actually doing it in yoga studios and doing it as a mindfulness practice. And when it evolved and people would open up so much, and all of a sudden they would say, hey, Jose, I got to talk to you. And all of a sudden they're telling me that something happened when they were 5 or 8, and a lot of these things were very intense. And I began to realize that I can't train yoga people to do this. I need to train people that have some experience dealing with this kind of stuff. So we shipped it and we created an immersion program. But when I started painting, it was really more like to heal myself, to go back to that place where I had been. Because when you have a near-death experience, you think about that experience. It's been 24 years. I think about it 10, 20, 30, 40 times a day. I can't detach myself from it. And when I remember it, it's not like a blurred memory. It's like you're there. It's real. It's happening to you. You relive it. And I've had a lot of it, opportunity to talk with a lot of people that had NDEs, and they all share that similar, it's like a memory that's burned into your mind. It's not like, memories as we get older, they fade, they begin to unravel. This stayed with me forever. And so, yeah, you think about it a lot. And I started thinking about using this color to heal others about 13 years after I started painting. 10 years after I started painting. It was 3 hours after I died, three years after I died, excuse me. And then it was about 10 years before I had the immersion program. And then I started saying, if this helped me, maybe it could help somebody else. So if I bring this image into my home, what energy does it bring with it? How can it help someone feel better? And that was my thinking. It was very simple.
You have I mean, you use that for motivation. Um, are there you use it for motivation and it drives you? Does it drive you like every day to achieve something?
Yeah, well, it inspires me because
Inspires.
what I use it for is to inspire people to understand and appreciate and love who they are. And that falls under the category of self-forgiveness. So when I died, after my father forgave me and I forgave him, I was able to forgive myself. So all these things that made me feel guilty and bad, I was able to let go a lot of them because a lot of them, I didn't cause them. Other people did them to me. And once I understood forgiveness, I understood this freedom that it gave me. So what I'm trying to do is give people that. And also, when you look at the art, if you could identify your higher self, who you really are, what you're really about. So I'll give you an example. I worked in rehab centers. One day I was working with a young girl that was struggling with addiction. That's why she's in rehab. And she had a real traumatic experience. And the traumatic experience made her say to me when I got there, when we were going to start the program, she said, Jose, I don't believe in God because if God was real, he wouldn't have let what happened happen. Now, I don't know what she's talking about. We just got there and we're just going to start the program. When we finished that program 6 hours later, she came up to me and she said, you know what? You gave me God back. And that girl left that rehab center 2 weeks later. This was 3 years ago. She's still sober. She was able to reconnect with her child. The court has taken her child away now. She was able to reconnect with him and she has her child back. And that is the payback. Having someone share that with you, that's your payback. Like you changed my life. Something changed me. And it's not me changing anybody's life. I say it's that spirit, whatever you want to call it, God creator, that higher self that you have in you. Because I learned that if I would have given up when I left the hospital, I would have died. But something in me still had that spark and it wanted to stay alive and I wanted to bring these paintings into this world somehow. And that inspired me to hang in there and come back. And now think about it. They gave me, no, when I was in the hospital, you're not going to leave here alive. When I left the hospital, you got 18 months to live. It's
Mhm.
24 years ago. In a few months, it's going to be 25 years. So
Wow.
I believe in that spiritual energy that we own. I believe in God, creator, whatever that is. There's something out there. There's something with so much more than this. And if you can learn that that's what you are, and this body is just a temporary loan, God loans us everything, right? Creator loans us everything. So I say my house, my car, my wife, my kids, like I own them. But when I died, I couldn't take a cent with me. All I could take was memories. And what I tell people is if all I could take is memories and all these bad memories are going to go away, two things. Let's let go of them while we're living so we can live a better a life. So I don't have to have all this pain and anger all the time in me, ripping my life apart, changing me, making me do things that I really don't want to do because I can't take it with me to the other side anyway. That stays here. And if I make good memories and that's the only thing I could take, then make as many good memories as you can because that is the only thing you're going to take back with you. Not a thread, not a scent, nothing else. Good memories.
I want to go back to just one thing when uh, I guess when you first started painting and they told you to start with a black canvas.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you still use that as a background, the black canvas, or
Yep, I paint with a black canvas. So every time you look at my painting, most of them you're going to see something that I call the core. One area that's black.
okay,
Even here, you can see some traces of real dark here.
right?
And it's the first thing I painted is completely black. So that canvas is totally black. And I believe it. So I went out at night. If you all go out at night and look out, you look up in the sky, you're going to see the black. You see stars, you see the moon, whatever's out there. But when you look in the black space, I know from my love, my passion in life with science and math, that in there are all the ingredients to make everything we know. So the dust, all that stuff that we can't see is there. And I'll give you another example. If you shut off, you're in your home and you make that room pitch black, you can't see anything in there. That room looks empty. Nothing there but black. You can make it pitch black. But the minute you put on that light, that room is filled. And that's the way I look at it. You know, in that blackness is all the ingredients to make everything we know. And that's the way I see it. So when I think of light and black and darkness, I think of it in a different format. I think both are essential. So when I say that I see the light in you, I see everything in you. I see the light, the dark, because without dark, there can be no light. Without light, there can be no dark. They all play off each other, right? One can't exist without the other. So I just look at it from that perspective. And when you paint something black and you look into it, it looks like infinite, like there's so much space. It looks like it has this tremendous depth. You know, it's 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 infinite.
Right. Now, I was curious because I have a friend of mine who's a very gifted artist, and for like the last 30 years, and he always painted on a white canvas. And then about 4 years ago, yeah, I guess he sort of had the revelation that I need to be painting on a black canvas. And so that's now he paints everything on black canvas. So it's, I guess in his art, it made quite a difference. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd like to catch up with him one day. It's you know, I think both are proper, but in my case, when I see the black points in the art, it's almost like it gets so infinite. So it makes that painting look three-dimensional almost, like it has all this depth. And maybe he's doing it the same way, I don't know, but that's, you know,
yeah, probably.
it's the magic of being an artist, right? You could do it this way or
Yeah.
that way.
You know,
And if it works for you, that's all that matters.
right. I mean, most of us are envious of artists that have such great expression.
Yeah.
We go and appreciate their work, and uh, possibly we don't quite understand everything that went into it. Um,
That's beautifully said. You said that really well. Because when you look at the art, it's that emotion that it inspires in you that attracts you to it. So what is that? What creates that emotion?
right.
There's something about it that I feel is talking to us. And it talks to us in a very personal, very, I can only use the word spiritual because it's not talking to me in words. It's just something that I see and I feel.
Um, is there other art you appreciate other than the paintings?
So I love art. I mean, and art, when you think of art, there's so many, you know, spaces where art is. There's music, there's paintings, there's so many things that are art. A chef is creating art. Uh, you know, to me, almost everything we do has an artistic flair to it. Our people that design our clothes, how we dress is art. Everything we do is art. So I look at art as an incredibly huge part of our life, not only just a painter that sits and paints. We're all creating art. So when we write a book, you're creating art. When you write a sentence, when you sing a song, everything we do is art. So think about it. The guys that created these computers, that's an art that we're doing this program with. The guys that create all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
they're creating stuff, right? And it takes that an aspect of art to do it. We look at this as more IT, more mechanical, but it's still art.
Um, I think you mentioned some possible government programs. Or,
Mhm.
is that in the US or is that in Canada?
Both.
Both. Mhm.
Yeah. So we're going to start some pilot programs, and if you go to the Emergent website, you'll be able, when we start them, you'll be able to kind of see what they are.
Okay.
And we're always looking for mental health professionals or certified addiction professionals, anybody in the field that might be interested in learning how to do the program. We do have a curriculum and a course. The instructors are college professors. So it's a legitimate course with a very spiritual flair. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, very good. Um, and then any other thoughts you would like to leave us with at this point?
Well, that's a tough question because there's so many things you always want to say, right?
Yeah,
But what I like to share with you is, look, life is not easy. Life is hard for everybody. I don't care who they are. Life is tough. We all have those difficult moments. So I say, make those good memories, laugh, enjoy yourself. Think about this. I believe that I was born with a tank full of love. God, Creator, gives me that to leave it here. And then we get a little hurt, we get a little bruised, and all of a sudden we shut down and we don't want to share ourselves with anybody else. And that means I'm going to go with that tank half full back. I say empty that tank out here. Leave all that love that you have, that you own, leave it here. Gift it to others. And you're going to see the magic that happens because they're going to gift you back. You know? So I'll say that as a passing word. And remember who you really are. I'm not just this. See this phoenix I wear on my neck? You all have one. You're all going to rise and resurrect somewhere. Believe that you're so much more than this body and believe that you deserve things and that you're good and that you're good enough and that, you know what? Maybe I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm serving and I'm helping other people in the way that I can do it. And that's all you got to do. Make yourself feel good about life.
very good. Very nicely said.
Yeah. And the last thing would be do not fear. We don't die. We don't die. People think about death as something negative. I was terrified of it until I experienced it. And then I found that in my experience, I found just as much life as I own here, even more. So it's just like one door closing and another one opening type mindset.
Right. Very good. Um, well, I want to thank you. It's been very informative, very thought-provoking, and it gives us energy for tomorrow. That's
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Mark and Inma, I see you there. Uh, I just wish you all the best. The holidays are coming. Enjoy them.
yeah,
Thanksgiving's coming. The holidays are coming. You know,
very
don't live
good.
them like you don't have a tomorrow. Live them like everything in front of you is there for you. And the way I look at it, I'm the center of the universe. The whole world exists because I'm here. It's
Very
there
good.
for me. And it's there for you. So look at it that way. Make those good memories and live your life. Enjoy it. Peace to all of you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, Jose.
Good night.
And
Thank
Good night,
to
Ima.
all our
you.
other
See you.
listeners, we'll have an additional program next Tuesday with Preston Dennett on the healing power of UFOs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Night, everybody.
Night.